Hey, Kristen. I love the little open, the pink fog.
It's kind of like my own little hype music. It's like if WWE was for middle-aged chubby women, like I'd be ready to rock and roll. Like it's a dopamine hit. It just kind of gets me in the spirit. So, but I'm so glad that you are joining me today. What an honor. Thank you so, so much.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to join you and feel a little of your energy.
Well, it might be a little too much for some people. So I'm glad that you decided, hey, I'm just going to ride that for 20 minutes and we'll just see how we go afterwards. So, but for those of you who are not lucky enough to know this amazing woman in front of me, I would love to introduce you to Colonel Bree Fram. She's a retired U.S. Space Force colonel, an astronautical engineer, a public policy expert, an author, a speaker, a former congressional candidate, and basically you're just a nationally recognized advocate for a conversation about visibility, authenticity, and the versions of ourselves that we create to survive. So
Well,
just put that all on a
you
little
did-
business card and you'll be all set.
I tried to get most of that on a card, and people are
Okay.
like, "Oh,
We
rocket scientist, author, colonel, what?" Uh,
So I think one of the things that I love about your story is that a lot of women hit midlife and we're suddenly finding ourselves questioning like things that we never did before, like who am I when nobody needs anything else from me? And I love that that you are a guest in this story because like so many cis women, so many women, so many just the questions and the privilege that we don't even realize that we're living under. Like I'd love for them to. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, just so for people, just how do you want to like? What's your business card look like?
well, I could literally grab a business card, like go off frame, and be like, "Oh, here's a business card that does say rocket scientist, author, keynote speaker, retired colonel, U.S. Space Force." But it also has this logo on it that I designed for a podcast that I did. It was on LGBTQ plus leadership development,
Mm,
and really did ask the question, along with the book that I wrote on this, of how do we become the people that we are? And for queer folks and for trans folks like me, how do we become the leaders that we are? How do those experiences that we have in our life that in the moment feel like discrimination or they feel terrible, how do they actually grow us as leaders who turn that leadership view outward? Like, how is it so that we can help others? How do we change the narrative from I went through some terrible things, so to prove yourself, I want you to go through those terrible things too, to one of I went through some awful things and I don't want you to have to go through those,
mm,
so that when you get to where I am, you have the opportunity and the energy to go even further. And that's one
mm.
of the things that my journey really did teach me. And I know your show is about, women over 40. It was for my 30th birthday that I gave myself the gift of possibility of what my future looked like. And it was for my 40th that I gave myself that authenticity,
Mm.
and finally took the steps to truly be me, and make sure that I was visible in the world so that I could be part of that solution and give others that opportunity.
Well, and as we look at like the versions of us that no longer fit, oftentimes like we start out growing it and it kind of seeps out like mashed potatoes, where it's just like, oh, there's a little bit of this, but the older we get, the more that integration becomes inevitable and it becomes unavoidable, and we can't just like silo different roles that we're in, and so especially as we grow and that need to be to honor our internal alignment becomes more important than getting the like attaboys and the praise from the external praises, which really kind of got us through our whole lives up until now. And and um and so for you, like you chose visibility as your word. And why do you think that's such an important conversation right now?
Well, I think we can go to the answer that so many people have heard, that if you can see it, you can be it. And to
Mm,
be part of the change, you have to ensure that the people coming up after you have the opportunity to be
yeah.
there as well. And so visibility was mightily important for me. When I had the opportunity to give presentations, particularly when I was in uniform doing this, and I talked about the history of inclusion in the military,
Mhm.
and I shared how, after centuries of exclusion, we brought in Native Americans, we brought in African Americans, we
Yeah.
brought in women, lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and
Yeah.
every day after, despite all the arguments about how bad it was going to be, the day after we were stronger and better for it.
Mm.
And when I gave those presentations, and I also talked about trans people being included, inevitably I would have a teenager, usually a queer kid, come up to me afterwards and say, I never thought that was possible for me.
Mm.
And you just had this moment where you were watching possibility blossom behind the eyes of a young person by
Mhm.
being visible, by telling a story, by
Mhm.
showing that there was a different way. And now we have the reality that that was a couple years ago when I was doing
Yeah.
this, and now even more of a challenge where the official position of the government says that people like me shouldn't exist, and
Mhm.
we should be erased from public existence. It is even more important to share and show those stories, that we are competent, caring, loving people who can thrive in the most difficult of
Mhm.
circumstances.
Well, and for me, like, it is a matter of just how fucking cowardly it is to focus on that 1% of the population versus the 1% that are actually, like, billionaires and money hoarder, like, just the people who are actually pulling all of the strings. Like, the idea of focusing on one of the most, like, powerless, marginalized communities and villainizing them so that we can have a boogeyman to
Yeah.
blame for things that are wrong in our life. Like, it's unfathomable to me. Like, that, especially when so many of them claim to proclaim and be driven by, like, faith and, like, oh, like, and I'm a Jesus girl. I love me some Jesus, but like, guess what? I don't think Jesus needs me as a bodyguard, as a defender. Like, I just happen to think that he's powerful enough that he's going to be okay, and that I'm just supposed to do what I was actually told, which is just to kind of love people and just assume that everybody's just doing the damn well best that they can. And so the amount of judgment and the amount of grace, just, it hurts my heart. And like, you're in Virginia, so I don't know what the day-to-day life is, but here in Indiana, the red is so prominent that it and bold, emboldened, like, the hatred and the judgment. Like, yes, there are still pockets, and I find my people, and I find the areas, like, I mentor a lot of queer young adults, and when I say young adults, I mean, like, people who are actually, like, voting age, not like, teenagers, but just being able to step in as kind of a surrogate, mother figure, and just be like, "You got this. You're okay." You're like, "Yes, this is how you check your credit score. Yes, this is how," or I send a lot of, like, Domino's pizzas, just as, like, emotional support pizzas.
It's
'Cause they're
emotional
they're
support
fun.
Cheetos in my
Right,
house.
exact yes, and it's just being able to hold on to that hope when there's a fire hose of grossness, like, anywhere that you look. The idea that you would be like, "Look at how the world dehumanizes me, and guess what? I'm going to pick the biggest stage on possible to stand up and make a difference." Like, that's the part that just, you know, blows me away and makes me just, like, in awe of your light, because it's and I know that on a personal level, on a microscopic level, when I'm struggling, the biggest thing that I can do is help somebody else. Like, that's the easiest way to get my butt out of the bunker, is to just be like, "Okay, how can I make somebody else's world a little bit better today?" And then that just naturally happens. But to do that on a bigger scale, on a statewide scale, on a, like, I'm talking about just, like, ordering a pizza, and you're like, "Nope, we're gonna get up on a stage, and we're gonna just, have this litany of, like, judgment, and just still not gonna let anyone dim my light, because there are so many people out there that need to see that my light matters." Like, that like, I can't even tell you how excited I was for this conversation because I can't even, like, I'm just I'm very touched. So thank you so much for all that you've done and how you just continue to just like the amount of grace when you were interviewed before Congress and even your speech when you conceded your congressional run was just like just making my face leak all over the place just because it's such a powerful, beautiful way to like go through life. So thank you for all that you do for even the people that aren't looking for representation, but of their gender ideology or whatever, but just humanity in general. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you. And you used a word, boogeyman, that I think is really important to this conversation because it was 10 years ago. My wife and I got interviewed on a BBC program asking, like, what is it about trans people in the United States? Why are you all so riled up about this?
Yeah.
And my I actually used that term. I said, it's because we're the last boogeyman.
Yeah.
And that because we are such a small segment of the population that so many people don't know us, and that they're able to believe these outlandish stereotypes that are presented to them about who we are. And my wife actually got me a t-shirt afterward that said, the last boogeyman. Uh, and so you talk about visibility, we'll wear that last boogeyman, but it was another piece during my congressional campaign where I got to go to a rural retreat for the Virginia Democrats. And I was asked, is it a liability for you to be campaigning here in the rural parts of Virginia as a trans person? And I had to say, absolutely not, because the trans story is a fundamentally American story. Because if we
Mm,
think about it, who are we as a nation if not assigned British at birth? And we then literally said, that's not who we are. We know we're better. And we fought a war to become Americans. So
ooh,
it's this realization that we can and must be the best version of
mm,
ourselves. And so that's the story I want to tell. That's the stereotype I want to shatter. Not that trans people are broken, but that trans people are just living their best life as the idealized version of themselves.
mhm,
They are working for that more perfect version of themselves, just like we should all be working for that more perfect version of our union.
mm. Hold on, I got it. Like, let's see here. Let's see. Where we go? Where'd it go? There we go. Hold on, I'm getting there. Here we go. Yeah. Ah, that
I
was so beautifully said. And
mean, you just
yeah,
gave
it
me the
is. It
soapbox and I stepped right onto it.
Oh, well, I will, if you need my hand to get up or down off it as many times as you want, I am here for that. Like, I just, and it so ties into what women in midlife are going through too, because we realize that we've been performing a version of ourselves that kept everybody else comfortable, and yet there's a difference between performing an identity and living one.
Yeah, there's a whole host of psychological and adult developmental research that talks about people as kind of these phases of development. And only 40% of people, even in adulthood, will get to a phase where they say, I live by my own standards, by my own values, rather than what society places upon me. I'm no longer this socialized mind. Yes, their values are important and they're meaningful to me, but I
Mhm,
judge myself by who I am. And I think queer and trans folks have an advantage in getting there because we have almost had to say, I reject your version of me and who I am, who I'm supposed to love or who I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to live as myself. But it is not just that kind of identity that gives us this pathway to, I know who I am and I'm going to
mhm,
live this way. Everyone has that opportunity, but it can be painful to say, this is me, not your version of me. But it opens a lot too. And that ability to be yourself and to put good into the world and have that reflected back to you is so meaningful
mhm.
that I think it is something that everyone would want if they knew what it actually felt like.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, people who've never had to question where they can safely be themselves, like, what do you think they're most likely to take for granted? Because I think that if I'm trying to give people the benefit of the doubt so that I don't, end up just like screaming into the void, like if that's the approach that I'm trying to take, I think part of it is just realizing people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And so how would you talk about that?
It's a challenge because everyone's coming from a very different perspective where they can assume that someone like me is doing this out of choice or out of, oh, you just want it easier. And there's so much we can talk about there, but why would anyone choose to be
Amen,
discriminated against, to
right?
pick a life that is more different, to take privilege and throw it in the trash?
Right.
Uh, I did not transition in the military because I wanted to be able to run a little slower on my PT test. I was already scoring at the top of the charts. This made it harder.
Right.
But the value that I got from being myself, which taught me how to be a better leader, how to be more open, and it actually removed many of my own blind spots. When
Mm,
I first walked into a room, when I was authentically myself, a meeting at the Pentagon that I would not have thought twice about before. And now I was looking around realizing, oh my God, this is almost entirely old white men. There's one person of color. There are two women. They might be the ones that support me in this meeting. And to do that kind of counting of who might be my allies, that's not something I ever realized
yeah.
happened before. And then when I talk to other women in particular, people of color, they're like, yeah, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
In the room and try and understand it. But I didn't know that. So many people that ask these questions or wonder, why would you do this?
Yeah.
You gross. They never even think about the situation, their blind spots that they didn't realize they had without experiencing it.
Well, and I can say that as a mom of a trans young man, I just, like the narrative out there that parents are pushing them down, we're pushing it down our kids' throats. I'm like, bitch, I cannot even get my kid to wear a coat in the winter. Like,
Or
do you
eat
really?
something green?
Right.
Like, never.
Like, how powerful do you think I am? And like, do they not get that our whole goal is to keep these human beings that we love with our whole freaking heart, like keep them alive? Like
Yeah.
that's the goal.
But
And
my
like, and
whole
all these
dream for
people are
you to
like,
be a
well,
moderately functional adult.
you can wait until you're 18 before like, and so many people are like it's about the like, well, I want them to be able to have children and I want them to, and it's like, okay, but like could maybe we treat people as human beings and not just potential baby factories? Like that is so unfathomable to me that like, no, I want my kid here. And the light that came into my child's eyes when they were able to step up into their authentic self. And I was one of the lucky parents who had access to blockers early and, like, so it wasn't like oh, we're pushing them into one camp or the other. But I'm going to tell you, as someone who did that, even then my kid is stuck in this kind of like Neverland where it's kind of like Peter Panville, where
Yeah.
my kid is seeing every other kid develop boobs or an Adam's apple or body hair or whatever the case may be, voice changes, like whatever. Like my kid was just kind of frozen in time and still then denied and had their own dysphoria and things like that because of that. And to make youth go through a second puberty just because we don't trust them to know who they are is just it's just another layer of cruelty that that will negatively impact how we validate their humanity, how they show up, and how they can become leaders. And so for me, being that like substitute mom, like I'm just going to trust that people know themselves better than I do. Go figure. Like, whack-a-doodle do, but here we are. So and but having that kind of like it hurts my heart how many times I have said to one of my cubs that just says, when I say, I'm proud of you, and they just weep because that is such a like words that they never expected to hear when they're just trying to figure out how to get through the day. Like it's just not right. And so I'm glad that we can like kind of turn it around in a Rubik's cube and you can be like, this is the same as this on a bigger scale. So love and acceptance and support and authenticity, that looks like this on a bigger scale. Um and so just trying to find that is just it's such an important conversation. So
Yeah. That looks like happy, healthy kids who are going to thrive as adults.
yeah. So tell me, like, if visibility could sit down at the table right now and give women over 40 one piece of advice, what do you think it would say?
What are you waiting for? Seriously,
Wonderful.
that's it. What are you waiting for to be visible, to be authentic? Because no one's going to give it to you. There's no magic promotion, there's no external validation that's going to say, okay, now you can be you. It
Mm,
has to be your choice. And what are you waiting for?
mm. The power of a decision is huge. And
Yeah.
whether it's we're living a relationship, we're coming out as our authentic selves, we're leaving a W-2 job that is toxic, it is it is the ability to say, I matter and I'm going to vote on me and I'm going to support who I am because if I believe that if I have a faith, if I believe in the goodness of any humanity, if any of that, if I know that I have a purpose that can lead with that love, the only way to maximize that is to make the net wider. And so when we choose to live an integrated life, when we choose to be authentically ourselves and be willing to like mute out all of the like blech, like our people will find us and the people who need us will find us, you know. And I talk about when I changed my last name to Bondiggity after my divorce that there were certainly lots of people that were like, well, that is an undermedicated potato and I do not want her in my life. But there were just as many people who were like, girl, that bitch is my new best friend and I haven't even met her yet. And that's what happens when we allow that kind of pureness to come into our purpose and our vision and our goals that we stop being just a trans person or just a disabled woman or just a fat person or whatever the case, like whatever labels that we've used to think that we don't belong, they actually just kind of melt away and we're able to just kind of show up just as beings. And I think there's a beautiful gift in that purity.
Oh, very much so. And my relation to that is actually my wife's story of her deciding in our new house here to put up a 12-foot skeleton and dress it in a different costume for like 5 months in a row leading to Halloween. And while the neighbors who are like, you're ruining our property values, we're never going to be our friends in the first place. The other people who walked by or left cards in our mailbox saying, you bring me joy, were her
Yes.
new best
I
friends.
want a big old 12-foot dopamine skeleton in my front yard. My HOA would definitely, she'd just be all verklempt all up in that. But so, oh, well, please write an article about the 12-foot skeleton and how that mirrors exactly what you're doing in the world for LinkedIn, because I want to share that shit all day long.
Oh,
So,
well, you're giving me an idea here, and I'm going to
okay.
just write that down right now. 12-foot article. We'll just call it
Bree, you're amazing. And like, you know, they say never meet your heroes, but oh, I'm so fucking glad that we did this.
that.
So
Well, it
you're
was a pleasure
amazing.
to talk with you.
Oh, you're great. Okay. And then if people want to like connect with you, like brag about yourself, tell us like what's your book? How do they find you? Like, you know, how do they get more Bree in their world?
There are no other Bree Fram, so you can find me on the internet very easily across all social media or at breefram.com. The books that I have are on my website, but Forging Queer Leaders is all about LGBTQ leadership. And I have two books about the experiences of transgender folks in the military.
And what are they called?
With honor and integrity and with valor and visibility.
Mm,
So hitting
mhm.
that visibility again as one of the most important things we can have to share our stories.
And if people want to give you, you know, share their stage, share their opportunities, share their network, where are you at right now as far as like this is what I'm kind of craving right now? What season are you in?
Well, I am trying to figure out what's next for me in my life. If I had, the world as my oyster, I'd figure out how we can celebrate the 250th birthday of the Constitution in 11 years by replacing it with something that fixes its founding flaws. But on the way to that, I would love to connect with people about what's possible, what's next, how do we make a difference, or if you need someone on your stage to inspire and tell some of these stories, find me at my website, breefram.com.
Mm. Thank you, Bree. I'm so grateful for you, and I'll be back here next week with my next amazing guests. But I am just gonna bask in the glow of this one up until then. So, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.